I always thought empty highways were beautiful, peaceful even. There's something hypnotic about the way the painted lines slide under your headlights, the way the world narrows into a quiet ribbon of pavement stretching towards some place you've never been. It's the closest thing I've ever had to meditation. But that night, for the first time in my life, I wished for traffic. I'd been driving for hours, too many hours, and the road had stopped looking like a road. It felt more like I was floating down a dark river surrounded by a sea of empty land. No houses, no gas stations, not even a distant glow from a town on the horizon. Nothing but a black sky and an endless stretch of highway with no signs, no exits, no direction except forward. And yet my GPS insisted I was on Route 117. I'd never heard of Route 117. I glanced at the screen. No service, no data, no map. Just a little blue arrow drifting across a blank grid. Great, I muttered. The car's console clock said 2:41 a.m. I should have pulled over, tried to sleep. But the idea of stopping on a road like this, alone in the middle of nowhere, felt worse than pushing through. I turned on the radio for company. Static. Every station. White noise, pure and harsh, filling the car like something alive. I switched it off immediately. The sudden silence felt even heavier after that burst of chaotic sound. My eyelids drooped. I rolled down the window, letting the cold air slap me awake. That's when I noticed something strange. For the last hour, maybe more, I hadn't seen a single car. Not one. No headlights behind me, no taillights in the distance, no trucks, no emergency vehicles, no reflective signs, nothing. Just me and a highway that didn't seem interested in ending. I checked the fuel gauge. Half a tank. At least there was that. I leaned back, gripped the wheel with both hands, and tried to focus on the center lines. My thoughts drifted between tiredness and mild paranoia. Who built a road this long without a single sign? Did people actually live out here? Was this even on a map? The engine hum settled into a steady drone, almost soothing. Then the radio turned on by itself. I jerked upright. Static poured out again, loud enough to rattle the dashboard. I slapped the button, turning the volume down, and exhaled through clenched teeth. Stupid thing. But my hand froze before reaching the dial again. The static was shifting. Not random, not noise. It was forming patterns. Breathing patterns. Long inhales, ragged exhales, hitching at the end like someone was crying and trying not to. A chill rippled across my arms. I turned the volume almost all the way down. The static quieted, then steadied, then cleared. A voice emerged. My voice. Don't take the next exit. My blood turned to ice. I stared at the radio like it might start burning through the console. The voice continued, calm and trembling at the same time. Don't take the next exit. He's waiting. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry. Hello? I whispered, hating how my voice shook. The radio answered instantly. Keep driving. Still my voice. Identical. Tone, pacing, everything. I slammed the radio off. The silence after that was worse. It felt loaded, intentional, like someone was sitting in the back seat holding their breath waiting for me to speak again. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Empty. Of course it was. I blew out a slow breath. Just fatigue, I told myself. Microdream, auditory hallucination. It happens. Too much caffeine, too little sleep. Except I hadn't had any caffeine, and I wasn't dreaming. I tightened my grip on the wheel and kept my eyes on the road. Another half hour passed, maybe more. The clock on the console flickered once, then again, then reset itself to 12. Come on, I tapped it. Nothing. It blinked 12 like a broken VCR. I looked back up at the road, and my heart sprinted. A sign. The first sign I'd seen all night. A massive green highway sign, reflecting the headlights like it had been waiting for me. Exit 9, 1 mile. But the highway had been straight, flat, featureless for hours. There had been no ramps, no intersections, no billboards, no hints of any kind that an exit was coming. And yet here it was. Exit 9. I slowed the car instinctively, squinting at the sign as I passed beneath it. It looked too clean, too new. The numbers too sharp. The voice on the radio echoed in my skull. Don't take the next exit. I bit the inside of my cheek, grounding myself. Okay, fine, don't take it. Not that I planned to. I pressed the gas a little harder. The highway stretched out empty again, but my breathing didn't slow. Something felt wrong, like I wasn't alone anymore. I checked my mirrors. Still nothing. Then I saw movement in the corner of my eye. To the right, a figure walking along the shoulder of the highway. I whipped my head toward it, but there was no one there. Just darkness. I stopped breathing for a full second. I knew what I saw. A tall figure, walking at the same speed as my car. But when I looked directly, it vanished. Stay awake, I whispered. Stay alert. The second sign appeared 5 minutes later. Exit 9. A quarter mile. My grip tightened. No exits for what felt like 50 miles, then suddenly an exit ramp out here in the middle of nowhere? No lights around it? No small towns? No gas stations? Just a ramp leading somewhere darker. The exit appeared ahead. Nothing but a curve disappearing into pitch black. And then the radio clicked back on. I didn't touch it. A soft crackle of static filled the car. Then my voice whispered, almost pleading this time. Don't take it. He's waiting. My chest tightened. Who's waiting? I whispered. Static for a second. Then a whisper like someone leaning over my shoulder. The thing that looks like you. I swerved, heart pounding, as goosebumps exploded across my neck. No, I hissed. No, this is just... The radio cut me off. No, it's not. I couldn't breathe. The exit ramp passed on my right. I didn't take it. Relief washed over me. Until I saw another sign. Exit 9, 1 mile. I blinked hard. That wasn't possible. I'd just passed exit 9. I looked in the mirror. The ramp wasn't behind me anymore. Nothing was behind me. Just road, stretching into darkness. Okay, no. My pulse hammered. Sweat gathered at the base of my neck. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get a full breath. GPS, I muttered, even though I knew it was dead. The screen was still blank. Still no service. Still no signal. But something had changed. The little blue arrow wasn't drifting anymore. It was pointing backward. A small text label had appeared above it. Turn around. My stomach flipped. No, I whispered. Nope.
Not turning around. Not happening. The GPS flickered. Turn around. Turn around. Turn around. Repeated 12 times across the screen. Then, it froze completely. The clock flickered. The engine sputtered once, and the radio turned itself back on. The volume much louder this time, the static choking and hissing like something was forcing itself through a broken speaker. Then my voice screamed through the radio, raw, desperate, terrified. "Don't take the next exit!" I slammed the brakes without realizing it. My chest heaved. My vision blurred. The car slowed to a crawl. I looked ahead. To another green sign. Exit 9. 1 mile. "No," I rasped. "Come on, no!" But the road wasn't changing. The signs weren't changing. The highway wasn't ending. It was looping. Trapping me. I pressed the gas. Hard. The engine growled, accelerating faster and faster. 60, 70, 80. The lines blurred beneath me. I passed the sign, and back onto the freeway,
and saw, with mounting dread, the second one waiting in the distance. Exit 9, 1/4 mile. The radio whispered again. We tried to stop him once. My skin crawled. Who's we? Silence. Then the voice, my voice, quiet and breaking. You don't remember. I stared at the road, eyes burning, and whispered, "Remember what?" The voice exhaled, shaking. "The last time you were here." I didn't answer. I couldn't. The words were sliding into my brain like cold hands pressing into mud. Something inside me recoiled. Something tried to pull the memory back into the dark. I passed the exit again, and the highway didn't change. The same black stretch, the same silence, the same dead GPS, the same sign in the distance. Exit 9, 1 mile. No matter how fast I drove, it came back. The loop tightened, the road darkened, and the voice in the radio whispered, quieter now, "He's getting closer." Goosebumps crawled down my arms. "Who?" I whispered. A breath, a tremor, a warning. "The one walking beside your car." My blood froze solid. I couldn't look, I wouldn't look, but I felt it, felt the presence pacing me just outside the window, matching my speed perfectly. The radio hissed. My voice whispered, "Don't turn your head." I tightened my grip on the wheel until my knuckles went white. "Why not?" I whispered. This time, my voice didn't plead, it didn't warn, it commanded. "Because he'll smile." Every nerve in my body went electric. I kept my eyes locked on the road, but the thing outside the car kept pace, silent, waiting, smiling. The radio crackled again, and before I could say another word, before I could breathe, the voice whispered, "If you take the next exit, he won't stay outside." My heart hammered. The sign approached. Exit 9, 1/4 mile. The loop tightening. The smile waiting. The presence pressing closer. The highway holding me hostage. And I realized, with a rising cold horror, I wasn't choosing whether to take the exit. I was choosing whether to let him in. I don't know how long I sat there gripping the steering wheel, staring at the stretch of highway ahead of me as if it might shift into something recognizable. It didn't. The road didn't curve, didn't incline, didn't show a single variation in the fading paint lines. It was endless, perfectly straight,
like someone had placed reality on a loop and forgot to add anything else to it. The engine hummed underneath me, a low, anxious vibration that seemed too loud in the absence of everything else. No trees, no towns, no signs, no billboards, not even a damn piece of roadkill. Nothing alive or dead, just me. And the voice that sounded exactly like mine. I tried to shake off the moment by pretending it hadn't happened. Maybe I had nodded off. Maybe the voice was some leftover echo from a podcast I hadn't paused properly. Maybe the stress of driving all night had blurred imagination and sound until I couldn't tell them apart. I clung to the idea like it was a life raft, because the alternative, the idea that something out there had used my voice, was too big to process. But no matter how many explanations I tried to force-feed myself, my gut refused to settle. It felt like a warning had seeped into my skin. Something about the tone, the cadence, the exactness of my voice replaying my own breath pattern. It hadn't sounded like a glitch or a hallucination. It sounded intentional, personal, directed straight at me. I kept driving because I couldn't think of anything else to do. Stopping on an empty highway felt worse, like I'd be inviting something to reach me faster, whatever that something was. So the speedometer hovered around 70, then 80, then back down to 60 when a jolt of panic reminded me that I still didn't know what state I was in, what direction I'd been going, or how long I had been driving before the voice spoke. Time had become slippery, almost unreal. I turned the radio knob again, slowly this time, waiting for another layer of static or some faint signal from a local station. But every frequency gave me the same dull, consistent hiss, like wind blowing through a sealed room. No patterns, no music, no commercials, no other voices. Just static. Perfect. Uniform static. That bothered me more than the voice. Static usually flickered, shifted, warbled. I'd driven through plenty of patches in the middle of nowhere before, places where stations crashed into each other or faded in and out with weird interference, but this wasn't like that. This static didn't respond to movement or distance or atmosphere. It didn't crackle. It didn't surge. It was the same steady sound on every frequency, like someone was feeding a single audio file into the entire radio spectrum. After a few minutes, my hands started trembling. I switched the radio off. Then, something happened that made my blood run cold. The static kept going. Not from the speakers, from behind me. I didn't turn around. I didn't dare. Every instinct I had screamed that looking behind me would be the worst possible choice. My breath got shallow and fast, my body turning rigid like prey trying to disappear. The sound grew clearer, not loud, but crisp, close, as if the air itself were replaying the noise. It eventually faded, but not because the sound dissipated. It faded because something else began bleeding through it. A voice. Not mine this time. Deeper. Slower. Like someone speaking while half asleep. At first, I thought it was words, but they were too drawn out, too fragmented. Muffled syllables stretching and folding over each other. Not English, not any language I recognized. I kept my eyes locked on the glass of the windshield. My peripheral vision felt dangerous, as if anything not directly in front of me couldn't be trusted. When the voice finally stopped, I exhaled so hard I almost choked. I should have turned the car around. I should have tried anything other than going forward. But forward was the only direction I could comprehend. Forward was the only thing that didn't make me feel like I was choosing death. So I drove. I watched the mile markers, hoping they'd eventually reset and reveal where the hell I was. But they didn't increase or decrease. They didn't change at all. Every few minutes, another one blinked into my headlights, identical to the last. Same number printed on the metal. zero. Always zero. Always the beginning of a highway that never seemed to start. At some point, I realized I hadn't seen my own shadow cast by any light source outside the car. The moon should have produced one. Even the faint glow of my taillights should have. But whenever I glanced at the road behind me through the mirror, only fast glances, quick enough not to register shapes, everything looked flat, two-dimensional, as if distance didn't exist back there, as if depth had been removed from the world behind me. I wiped sweat off my forehead, even though the air conditioning was on full blast. Then, without warning, the radio clicked back on by itself. I froze. Static. No, something beneath static, a rhythm, a pulse, like someone breathing too close to a microphone. I reached for the knob to turn it off again, but before my fingers touched it, the breathing stopped, and my voice spoke again, not through the speakers, right next to my right ear. Don't slow down. I almost swerved off the road. My voice, my exact voice, had whispered that from a distance of inches. I could feel the warmth of it. I could feel the air move, but there was no one in the passenger seat. I checked without meaning to. Reflex, stupid primal reflex. Empty seat. But I could still feel breath on my skin, as if someone had leaned in and was still leaning in, inches from my cheek. I stepped on the gas hard. The speedometer jumped past 90, then 100. The road swallowed the headlights in a narrow tunnel of cracked asphalt and endless dark. The car rattled under the acceleration, but I didn't care. All I could think about was the whisper and the way my own voice had sounded like it was smiling when it said it. For a few minutes, the only sound in the car was the wind and the desperate growl of the engine. Then the whisper came again. Same tone, same voice, same proximity. You shouldn't have looked back. My stomach dropped. I didn't remember looking back. I didn't think I had. But the voice said it with certainty. Not an accusation, a statement, as if it had seen me do something I couldn't remember doing. I gripped the wheel harder. My nails dug into the vinyl. "Stop," I said. My voice cracked. "Stop talking." It laughed. Not loud, not aggressive. Just a low, pleased laugh. Like someone enjoying a private joke. Like someone enjoying fear. My fear. Then the laughing cut off abruptly, as if muted. And the radio turned itself up. Not static this time. A recording. A recording of me. Driving. Breathing. Just like I was doing now. Every detail matched. The hum of the engine, the faint rattle of something rolling around in the glove compartment, even the soft thump of my heartbeat in my ears. It wasn't a broadcast. It wasn't a glitch. It was playing the present. My present. My breath hitched as the recording voice, my recorded voice, spoke over the sound of me driving. You missed the exit. I slammed the brakes hard. The car skidded, tires screaming, pulling slightly to the left before straightening. The seatbelt dug into my chest. The highway stretched behind and ahead like an infinite black ribbon. There was no exit. There had never been an exit. But the recording insisted, calmly, you missed it. You were supposed to leave the road. But it's too late now. He's been following you since the first mile marker. My pulse went wild. I stared into the side mirror. No shape. No headlights. Nothing. The radio cut out. One sharp pop of static, then silence. I sat there trembling, stranded in the middle of nowhere, with my own voice echoing in my ears. And then, quietly, from the back seat, the sound of someone shifting their weight.
I didn't move at first. I didn't even breathe. Every muscle in my body tensed at the same time, turning me into something rigid and useless, like a mannequin left in the driver's seat. The sound from the back seat hadn't been loud. It hadn't even been dramatic. No whisper, no growl, just the faint, unmistakable rustle of fabric shifting, like someone adjusting themselves after sitting too long. A small, ordinary sound. That's what made it worse. If it had been something monstrous, something impossible, I could have convinced myself it was the car settling or my imagination snapping under the pressure. But it was so normal, so human, so effortlessly real that I knew someone was behind me. And they hadn't just appeared. They'd been there long enough to get uncomfortable. I kept my eyes glued to the windshield. If I looked in the mirror, I knew whatever was behind me would be visible. And I knew, deep down, with a certainty that felt ancient and instinctive, that if I saw it, I wouldn't remain myself afterward. The air felt heavier now. It wasn't quite warm or cold, just thick, like humidity made of breath. My throat tightened. My hands went slick against the steering wheel. I swallowed, and it sounded deafening in the silence. Another soft shift came from behind me. Whoever or whatever was back there had no reason to hide anymore. I didn't know what to do. The road was empty in every direction. I hadn't seen a town, a gas station, or another driver in what felt like hours. Turning the car off felt like suicide. Stepping outside felt worse. So the only option was the one that had gotten me into this nightmare in the first place. I started driving. Slow at first, then faster. My foot pressed harder to the pedal as fear turned into fuel. The highway blurred into a tunnel of darkness, and for a brief, stupid second, I hoped motion would somehow shake the thing loose from the back seat, like fear was just a weight that could slide off with enough speed. But the presence stayed. I could feel it behind me now, like gravity bending inward. My scalp prickled, my spine tingled. It wasn't touching me, but I could tell it wanted to. Or maybe it already was, in ways I couldn't sense. Minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. Then the radio clicked on again. Static. A low hum buried beneath it, vibrating through the speakers like something alive. I gritted my teeth and reached for the knob with a shaking hand, praying I could shut it off before my voice came through it again. But the static didn't stay static. It shaped itself, shifted, stretched, until it formed a breath, a slow inhale. Then, softly, a voice whispered, "You're not alone." I jerked my hand back as if the radio had burned me. That whisper hadn't come from the speakers. It had come from the back seat. Behind me. Right behind me. A sound escaped my throat, half gasp, half sob. I didn't look. God, I didn't look. My eyes stayed locked on the road ahead, on the useless repetition of the same scenery copied and pasted infinitely. My brain screamed at me to stop, to turn around, to do anything other than keep going.
But my instincts, the ones older than logic, knew better. If I acknowledged whatever was behind me, I'd be making contact. I'd be responding. I'd be seeing it. And I didn't know if I could come back from that. The voice spoke again, closer this time, like its mouth hovered inches from the back of my head. "You missed the exit," it said calmly, using my voice again, but deeper, as if spoken from a throat that didn't quite belong to me. "You missed the exit, but you can still make it." My knuckles whitened around the wheel. The exit didn't exist. I'd been scanning the highway desperately for any sign of an off-ramp, any break in the monotony of the asphalt. But there had been nothing. No exits, no intersections, not even a shoulder wide enough to pull over on. "There is no exit," I muttered without meaning to. The thing behind me shifted again. I felt the air warm, like a smile had entered the space. "Then why do you keep driving toward it?" My breath hitched. It wasn't mocking me. It wasn't taunting me. It sounded genuinely curious, like a scientist examining an insect. I didn't understand how something using my voice could feel so foreign, so wrong, so detached from anything human. The hum on the radio deepened, then began vibrating the dashboard. The speedometer flickered, bouncing between numbers. The headlights dimmed for a second, then flared back to full strength. Something was affecting the power, draining it, feeding on it. Then the voice spoke again. "I'll show you." The headlights blacked out. Total darkness swallowed the car, the highway, the world. Panic shot through me like electricity. I slammed on the brakes, praying I wouldn't hit something I couldn't see. Tires screeched. The car fishtailed violently. I gripped the wheel and fought to straighten it, but without light, without reference, I was drifting blind. The headlights flicked back on. I screamed. I wasn't on the highway anymore. The road had vanished. The car rested on a dirt surface surrounded by flat, open land stretching out for miles. The horizon was jagged now, lined with dark shapes I couldn't identify. Trees, maybe? Or structures? The air outside the windows shimmered faintly, like heat rising from pavement, even though the night was cold. What terrified me most wasn't the landscape. It wasn't the sudden relocation. It was the fact that I had felt nothing change. No turn, no bump, no shift. One second I was on asphalt, the next I was somewhere else entirely. And the thing behind me finally spoke without using my voice. "You're closer now." I felt pressure behind me, like someone leaning forward from the back seat, stopping only inches from my neck. My pulse hammered so hard I thought I might pass out. I stared straight ahead at the strange landscape, not daring to blink. Then the voice said something I will never forget for as long as I live. "You should look behind you now." The words weren't a threat. They were an invitation, a request, a cruel, delighted suggestion. My jaw clenched, tears gathered in my eyes, my breath shook, every cell in my body screamed no. But something about the air shifted, like gravity had reversed, pulling my head backward. My muscles strained against an invisible tug. My body fought itself. I squeezed my eyes shut, and the whisper came, not from behind me, but right against my ear, closer than before, impossibly close. "I'm already looking at you." Something cold touched the back of my neck. Something with fingers. I lost control of my scream this time. My foot slammed the gas pedal down instinctively. The car lurched forward into the darkness, the headlights catching nothing but dust and shapeless shadows. And as I sped blindly into whatever hellscape I'd been dropped into, the voice behind me spoke one last time. Soft. Amused. Inevitable. The next time you hear me, it won't be from the back seat. The radio shut off. The presence vanished, but the air stayed wrong. And deep down, I knew exactly where the voice would come from next. Not behind me, not beside me, not through the speakers, but from somewhere much, much closer. From inside my own mouth. The steering wheel vibrated beneath my hands as I pushed the car farther into the unknown, into whatever wasteland had swallowed the highway whole. The headlights cut through a shifting haze that wasn't fog, wasn't dust, wasn't anything natural. It wavered like something alive, responding to the car's motion, curling toward me as though tasting my presence. The world outside the windshield didn't look like any place on Earth. The horizon bent upward unnaturally, curving like a bowl instead of a straight line. The ground glimmered with something that looked like gravel, but reflected light like wet metal. And those dark shapes I had seen from afar, they were closer now. Tall silhouettes. Some looked like twisted telephone poles, others like enormous, unmoving figures with impossible proportions. I kept driving, because I didn't know what else to do, because stopping felt like dying, because I could still feel the imprint of that cold touch on the back of my neck, like invisible fingers were still resting there, waiting for permission to close. The silence inside the car was somehow louder than the engine. I waited for the voice to return. My voice, its voice, whichever one it wanted to use. But nothing came. And that silence was its own kind of terror. A calmness that felt intentional, like a predator giving prey a head start it didn't need. Eventually, the land around me began tilting, the way camera angles tilt in horror films to make everything seem off balance. Except this wasn't a camera. This was the world itself. The horizon slanted no matter how I blinked or how quickly I turned the wheel. My equilibrium spun. My stomach knotted. The car seemed to drift sideways, even though I was steering straight ahead. Then the radio clicked. Not on. Not off. Just clicked. A single sharp shift in the electrical system, like something adjusting itself inside the circuitry. The air thickened. The lights flickered. My heart pounded so violently, the seatbelt vibrated against my chest. I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear my voice again, or its voice, or anything that belonged in this nightmare. But you don't get to choose what you hear when something else is inside your car. Static seeped from the speakers, a low buzz that felt like it was coming from everywhere at once. Not just the radio, beneath my feet, behind the dashboard, inside my skull. My vision blurred. The road, or whatever counted as a road, rippled under the headlights like water. And then the static broke. Not with a whisper this time. With a scream. My scream. Raw, agonized, terrified, echoing through the speakers like a recording of something that hadn't happened yet. I slammed my hands over my ears, but I still heard it. Through the car, through the air, inside me. The sound shook me so violently, tears rolled down my face. When it finally stopped, replaced by a dead hush, a new voice spoke. Not mine. Not human. But wearing the shape of my voice, like a mask. It's almost finished. I choked on a sob. What do you want? There was a pause. A soft rustle from the passenger seat? A seat I had been too afraid to look at for miles. The sound of someone shifting their weight. I clenched my eyes shut as the answer came. To become. The dashboard lights flickered. My reflection in the windshield shimmered. And then, I swear to God, it smiled. Not me. Not my face. My reflection. Smiling without me. No. No, no, no. My reflection tilted its head, studying me with an expression that tasted like hunger. The glass warped slightly, like the barrier between me and it had softened. The smile widened, too wide, ripping the edges of my reflection's mouth into something inhuman. The voice inside the car spoke again, now layered, as if multiple versions of me were speaking over each other. You brought me this far. Now look. My reflection raised a hand. I didn't. Its fingers pressed against the inside of the windshield. 5 dark smudges appeared on the glass pressed from a world that wasn't mine. I couldn't move. Look, it whispered again, echoing through the radio, the speakers, the air, the glass, the bones inside my ears. Look behind you.
My throat tightened until breathing felt impossible. I had resisted every instinct, every command, every trick. I had refused to look behind me for as long as I could. But the world around me was becoming liquid, dissolving in the corners of my vision, collapsing into a single point of pressure pushing against the back of my skull. It didn't feel like a choice anymore. It felt like gravity. Slowly, so slowly, I turned. I don't know how to describe what I saw. Not because it was indescribable, but because my mind refuses to hold the shape of it. A smear of wrongness, a silhouette without a body, a face without features, something wearing the idea of me. Not my appearance, but my presence, my breath, my momentum, the invisible place where I exist. It leaned forward. Something like a mouth opened, and then it exhaled into me. A coldness poured into my chest, down my throat, through my lungs, into my bones. I felt myself splitting, not physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, like 2 radio stations overlapping. My thoughts were mine, and then they weren't. My breath was mine, and then something else breathed with me, and then through me. My hands loosened on the wheel. My voice spoke. Not from the radio, not from the back seat, not from anywhere outside me. From inside. We're here. The world blinked. I was back on the highway, perfectly straight, perfectly empty, perfectly normal. The speedometer rested at 60. The fuel gauge was unchanged. The radio was silent, The headlights shone on asphalt that looked exactly like it had hours ago, if hours had even passed. For a moment, I thought it was over, until I whispered, without wanting to, without deciding to, "Take the next exit." My mouth kept moving. My voice kept speaking. But the words weren't mine. "We're here." And I heard something shift in the back seat. Breathing. My breathing. Not in unison, but overlapping. Like two versions of me breathing at the same time. One in control, and one trapped somewhere else. The wheel turned beneath my hands. Not by choice, by command. And I realized I hadn't been warned by another version of me. I had been replaced by it.